Welcome to Gallery Teachers Masterclass. My name is Erin, and today I'm going to be talking about using adverts to teach anything. All right then, so today in the workshop, I'm going to be starting by talking about why adverts are such a good choice for our teaching. I'll show you one advert that's a favourite of mine and talk you through some teaching possibilities with this. We'll then look at a different advert and explore some teaching possibilities with that one as well. And then I'll go through some considerations for you so you can choose your own adverts in your classroom. Okay, so starting with why adverts. As we all know, we learn best with stories. Think about the way that you've learned things in the past. If there's a narrative, it usually means more to you and sticks with you. And let's think about the way that adverts are made. They have a big impact in a short space of time, and they should be little effort for the viewer. And I think that's a really good point in the classroom, because we often use a text, either audio or written, for students as a vehicle to get some language and to practice some language. And while that's great because we practice listening or reading skills, sometimes you want a fast track way of getting to a theme or a language point without wearing out your students in that sense, in a skill sense before. And the best adverts, because of how they, the purpose of them in the real world, are memorable and meaningful. And they can be quite touching sometimes as well. So again, this helps our students memorize or kind of retain what you're trying to teach when you use these adverts. And they are often very multi-layered as well. And they have lots of different characters, lots of different themes, again, in such a short space of time. So there are endless possibilities, but you can kind of narrow these down to best meet your class needs, and more on that later. As I mentioned, it's a great alternative to another text. And they work really well both face-to-face and in the online classroom. So there's some nice flexibility there as well. Okay, so let's start with advert 1. Okay, we're going to watch and enjoy this advert together. Just to warn you, the advert's about just over a minute long, so it's quite fast, so do pay attention from the start. Watch and enjoy.
Sorry. Come on. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. Yeah, go on.
I'd like a bar of chocolate, please. It's for my mum.
Your change.
Happy birthday, Mum.
Thank you. There's a glass and a half in everyone.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed. And that is something that I would start with, okay? I think we often have a text where we choose a gist question. We're always taught to do this, okay? So that students are focusing on the general idea. But I think with an advert, it's not always necessary. To reflect reality, sometimes it's really good to watch it and enjoy it first for that genuine reaction. So I'm hoping, I can't see exactly how you reacted right now, but I'm hoping that there are smiles on your faces and it's making you think of the meaning of this advert. And if we were all in a room together, I'd be asking what you thought immediately. I think the more genuine the reaction and the process, so perhaps without a gist question sometimes, the more invested students are. Okay, they don't know what they're going to watch. They have no specific focus, which some people would argue is not great, but I think in such a short space of time, it's absolutely fine. but always warn how short the advert is, as I did for you, because as you know, with an audio, sometimes students can need a tune-in time and they miss the first 30 seconds and get lost. I think with an advert, it's not so difficult to retain your attention, but sometimes we might miss the first part. Okay, so this advert that we just watched, the product obviously was Cadbury, and the context was the child's parent's birthday, the mum's birthday. And I think it's important to process for meaning first. What I mean by this is allow students to watch, comment, and enjoy that process. Don't necessarily prescribe their reaction with a gist question, which can kind of pigeonhole them into a certain area. And again, we want that genuine response. So explore their reaction with kind of any thoughts, opinions that they have, and deal with those emerging needs. And you can offer vocabulary or grammar points by just building on their reaction. Again, it's far more genuine this way. So for example, a student might finish the advert and say, "The little girl is so cute. She gives all her toys for the chocolate," which is a perfectly fine sentence, but you might want to build on that as a teacher and say something like, "Yeah, she gives her toys away." We can say she's selfless, or thoughtful, or generous, and you can explore those qualities. And these words tend to be the ones that we don't use so frequently. So it's a great way to get students using that vocabulary. And I really believe that students will be more inclined to remember this and to use this if you give them those words at the point of communication. So it means something to them because they just tried to express it. Or perhaps you're interpreting what they're saying and you're reformulating, and they say, "No, I don't mean that, I mean something else." And it opens up this kind of lexical opportunity. Okay, so I think it's really important to elicit their genuine reaction and to continue eliciting what they believe, what they're thinking about this, and then elicit even more. So I would pair up students with kind of more probing questions rather than "what did you think?" for a more focused discussion. So this could be an opportunity to revise something that you've done before, or it could be to focus on new target language from the advert. And I think the questions that you give them should be a mix, okay? So they could be a mix of kind of fact-checking questions. How old was the girl? What toys did she give? And they could be questions with a higher order as well. Okay, so what I mean by this is how old was the girl? Why did she buy her mum a gift? These are more fact-checking. But higher order, which toy do you think was her favorite and why? Okay, so they have to discuss the toys that she gave, how she looked when she gave them, what was going through her mind, and how did her mum feel maybe at this point of the advert when she gives the chocolate compared to the beginning when she was busy at work. And not just the mum, the shopkeeper too. He's a really important character, and you can explore that with them as well. Okay, so this is where I think listening can come in. Okay, so there is dialogue in the video. It might not be the most memorable part of it, but after you've processed for meaning and you've explored these themes and your opinions and you've got the vocabulary that you want, I would own in on the dialogue, and I would have the students work out what the prominent words were. Okay, so perhaps chocolate, change, thank you. But I'd listen again and again, and I'd try to work out the gaps. I'd probably use the board at this point and work as a team. So to write the words that they can hear, those prominent ones, and then listen again and try and work out what the gaps could be. The more functional language, like "I'd like." And of course, you can bring out their grammar awareness here as well by working out what has to go in those gaps or what isn't possible. Or alternatively, you could prepare a gap fill for students to use independently. It all depends on the needs of your class that day. Okay, so with this advert, I think it's a really good opportunity to get functional. Okay, this advert lends itself to shop dialogues, shop conversations, which is something that all students like to practice and kind of need to, because culturally we use language very differently in this context. So you might have a conversation, a basic one like this that you can see, starting with "Hi there, could I have?" and ending with "Here's your change." Okay? So I'd have students run through the dialogue in pairs. I'd listen and I'd highlight and drill functional phrases. Could I have, sure, that's, please. And when you're doing that, I think you should really note connected speech for really natural, authentic pronunciation. So for example, you might focus on the linking between can I or could I, or you might talk about the intonation as well. And you can take a gradual approach with a dialogue, depending on the level or confidence of your students, with a disappearing dialogue. So what I mean by that is if you take a look at the conversation now, many of the functional phrases are missing. So you can get students to try and see what they remember, what they forget, flick back to the original conversation, work out what's tricky for them to pronounce, and keep practicing that way until they no longer need these stabilizers. And then you could go freer with a traditional role play. Okay, one student's the shopkeeper, one is the customer. But do give them some specifics of what they need to ask for and what they can offer, just to give them that extra push. So a possible lesson shape for this advert would be to focus very heavily on processing for meaning and for information first, and that's the watch and enjoy and the comment and reaction part, where you would deal with emerging needs. If we go to the right-hand side of the page, this is where I'm going to focus on exploiting that advert as a vehicle for language and to practice our skills as well. And specifically in this one, to apply that to everyday life and to take the context into a kind of very generic context for students that they can use to practice their functions. Okay, advert 2. So this advert, I think, is a bit more thought-provoking than the first one. And you could call it an advert or you could call it a campaign, okay? And this campaign has layers, certainly, and it has multiple themes. So rather than just watch and enjoy, for this one, I'd probably try to aim to test my students' critical thinking, to work on their text analysis, and I would use a gist question here. So I'd streamline their focus with a pre-watch question. So I'll give it to you before we watch. So I want you to decide while you're watching, what is this video mainly about? Keyword mainly. Is it about space travel, water poverty, or childhood dreams? Okay, let's have a watch.
Breaking news, water has been found on Mars.
Wow, but nobody's thirsty there.
If only there could be clean water here in our village.
Discovering water on Mars.
Water?
Some people dream of finding water on Mars. Some people dream of finding it here on Earth. Our mission is here. Water aid. This is personal.
Okay. So in this case, of course, we explore all of these themes in the campaign, but of course, water poverty is the main message. And that's something that you can really explore with your students. They might disagree with you, and you can talk about that. Okay, so with a campaign that's multi-layered, I would process for meaning again, but this time I would personalize it to kind of focus your reflection. So I would check facts again and test memory on what they saw. Again, there's a lot of information packed into such a small time. So it's important to have a mix of questions. And I think as well, when something is slightly higher order, that you should have this mix of questions to appeal to different types of thinking in the classroom. So that everyone has a chance to contribute. Some students will remember all of the details, and other students will be focusing more on how they felt during the advert. And if you're wary of those thinking types as well, if you can, it's excellent to pair those kind of students together so they've got two different sides of thinking happening when they discuss. Okay, so you might personalize it. What was your favorite part? Or what was the worst part? Tell your partner and why. You might talk about feeling again. How did it make you feel in general? How did you feel compared to the beginning and the end? Did you see the name of the charity? What is a charity? Yeah, so what was the name? Describe, define, talk about this, clarify. Did you recognize the song that was playing? Okay, so there might be music fans in your class as well. And then you can discuss the significance of the song and the message and the themes of the campaign. And which planet was the little girl trying to get to? Okay, so again, factual, but also metaphorical too. So if you can mix those questions up and even mix the students who are discussing them, you can really get a holistic version of the advert or campaign. You could also, with an advert like this, design a kind of quest for students. So rather than take them through step by step and have you control the pausing of the advert or the particular questions, you could give them an extended individual practice, which would allow for kind of a more independent exploration of the advert, a kind of analysis of the advert with some guided questions. And again, that boosts autonomy, but it also takes the pressure off. Sometimes when students are discussing something and they've got different ways of thinking, that's good, but sometimes it can be quite pressured. So it's good to have a contrast of tasks when you're doing something like this. And that would allow really well for some independent coding. So instead of me, the teacher, kind of asking students what the prominent words were and trying to work as a team, you could get them to do that on their own. Okay, so for example, this is from a worksheet that I made, a kind of quest. Question 3, 4, and 5 were gap fills for some independent coding from the dialogue in the text. Okay, so what did they hear on the radio? Water has been found on Mars. And if they have time to stop and pause and even look at the subtitles if they need to, again, it takes the pressure off and it's a great way of them working through this on their own. And you could probe for specific vocabulary as well, rather than just listening to their comments and engaging and dealing with their emerging needs. You could get them to try and think, oh, what is the word for this? By using stills of the video. Okay, so you could screenshot part of the video and say, how does she feel in this moment when she's getting in her spaceship and she's about to fly, compared to how does she feel when it doesn't work? And again, they're not words that we tend to use every day in the classroom. So these feeling of pieces of vocabulary can often come really naturally out of an advert. As I said, it's an interpretation as well. So there's no wrong or right when we're talking about feelings. And that's something that you can work through in the classroom. So with this particular advert campaign, I would aim to expand it grammatically or thematically. You could use the linear narrative of any advert to practice verb tenses. Okay, so in the classroom, you could stop what happened before, what's going to happen. But you could also do this in a quest by using stills, as I mentioned before in the previous slide. and have students order those events and explore those verb tenses. Okay, but you can also get them to predict. It could be after the advert. What do you think will happen after the advert? Or what happened before the advert began? And you could really get down to more nuanced grammatical features. You could talk about features like about to do something, because in an advert, it's second by second. So you could say, for example, what is the father in the story, or what is the man about to do? Okay, and again, it's probing for that specific vocabulary. He's about to turn the tap off the tap stand that was just installed. And you could also gather and select these themes to give extended speaking opportunities. Okay, so in these extended speaking opportunities, you could go down another route of target language. And you could also put in those higher order questions. But you could also have CLIL moments. So you could start aiming to or see genuinely if you end up teaching something from another subject via your English. So let me give you some examples. Okay. This is technically learning about water poverty around the world. Okay, but also getting students to react. This is talking about cause and effect. Okay, those two questions are really good for IELTS practice, for example. Okay, again, it's personalized, and it can end up leading students down a very kind of different target language path, all about space discovery or space travel. And this question can be quite controversial as well. Some people feel quite strongly about it both ways. Again, can you name the planets in English? How many planets are there? This has changed over the years. And again, it's something that you know perhaps in your language, or maybe you don't. We've all got different educational backgrounds, so that can be quite interesting. Okay, so you can then focus on the theme or the metaphor of the advert, going back to the decoding that the students worked hard to get the answers for. And again, you can explore that. Or go back to the other kind of joint theme or lesser theme of childhood dreams. The girl in the campaign dreamed of finding water on Mars, dreamed of doing something. Think about your gerunds, or talk about what you wanted to be when you were a child and what you were going to do, but you changed. Again, there's so much that you can explore there, both grammatically and thematically. So for this lesson shape, I would identify a purpose of the video. So that could be a multiple choice question. We're going to watch this video. What's the purpose for it? Is it to raise awareness of space travel? Is it to raise awareness of a charity? So you could rephrase the question that way, or the gist that I used. So that prepared you, hopefully, and my students to focus on something when they watched, because it was multi-layered and I wanted them to get the main idea quickly. And then to exploit the text as a vehicle for language. So you could practice listening, but again, this could be more independent this time, or you could do it as a class. It's all flexible. And then you can explore these themes in an extended speaking practice. You could do error correction, delayed error correction. There's so much in there, it's jam-packed, so students have a lot to say. Students' main complaint for me is, I know what I want to say, but I don't have the vocabulary. Well, you can be there to help them through that. Or you can own in on that in the guided discovery through the stills, so that when it comes to the speaking practice, they're armed with that vocabulary and they feel confident. Another main complaint is that students know a lot of English, but they don't have the ideas, they don't have the opinion, or they don't have the confidence to explore that. If you've taken them through a narrative and on a journey, they're usually much more comfortable to do this. And again, if you mix different types of thinkers together, or reactors to the adverts together, you can really balance out any insecurities in the class and just kind of raise everybody's confidence up so that you can really explore all those themes, or grammar as well. Okay, so the last part of the presentation is to consider what we've kind of talked about in this workshop, but also for you going forward so that you can find and choose and know what to do with adverts in the classroom. So I would always choose an advert that leaves an impression on you, okay? If it makes you feel something, then you've got a good chance of it meaning something to students as well. Not always, okay? But start with that. If it's something that you find annoying, boring, don't bother with it, okay? You're going to be analyzing this and deconstructing it and talking about it for a lesson or longer. So choose something that's going to mean something to most people in the classroom. And you can find them, of course, on TV if you're a TV watcher, or however you watch TV or series, or however you kind of enjoy or explore media. There will always be pop-ups, there'll always be adverts. And of course, this doesn't have to be a video. I've chosen a video, but you could actually look at stills of adverts as well. I think it's really key not to shoehorn strange things into a lesson. I sometimes find that if you have a syllabus, you've got something that you have to teach and you're looking for ways to explore that. Adverts are a really good way of doing that. If you know you have to teach functions and you see an advert where it happens and it's all played out for them, but it's just a short space of time, it's a really, really good thing to explore. But by the same token, if you have an advert that you personally enjoyed and it made you think or it made you feel, then see what's already there and use that to teach. So flip it. And what I would do is when I watch something, I would kind of jot down or make a note of my initial feeling, and I would look at the themes and I would explore those possible themes in my preparation time, maybe during a mind map, something like that. But then I would select my focus depending on my class's needs. They don't need to explore absolutely everything. So you've got so much that you could do, but try to whittle that down to something that they could really benefit from. Experiment with an initial approach, as I did. Okay, so you could watch and enjoy and then comment, and it's more kind of reflecting reality, but less focus. Or you could give something to the students to think about first, a gist, and kind of own in on what you want to focus on from the start. Be aware of cultural sensitivities. I mentioned before, choose an advert that makes you feel something. Most of the time, it will make others feel that way. Not always. We all come from different backgrounds. Do consider if your advert is appropriate, what it may trigger, and if it's perfectly appropriate, as far as you know, but you think different reactions will come from it, then explore that, because that's really interesting as well. Why did you feel like that? Talk about your background and bring that into the classroom. Decode when possible. Okay, so adverts are short and they are short bursts of dialogue, and that can be perfect for decoding skills. It's not too strenuous. Students are invested because they enjoyed the advert first, and then they're kind of getting deeper and deeper and deconstructing it. So decode when you can. And finally, play around with the format of an advert. Okay, as I mentioned, it could be a still or it could be a video, but if it is a video, chop it, pause it, make it work for you. Okay, of course, it's not your advert to edit, but you can explore it in different ways. Okay, so if you are interested in your continuous professional development, you want to know more about English language teaching in general and how you can implement that into your classroom, please visit the Gallery Teachers website, where you can find many other workshops to take part in. Well, we use adverts for teaching and learning English because they are kind of very short videos that have a big impact, but really require little kind of processing and effort from our students. They have so many different contexts, explore so many different themes, and you can kind of cherry pick what you like from those adverts in terms of how you want to use them as a vehicle for any target language or to practice any skill. So it's like a ready-made lesson for you. Okay, so I think that the best use of a TV advert in the classroom totally depends on the needs of your class and your students. If you look at an advert, there are endless possibilities. You could definitely use it for something short to introduce, to kind of activate their learning and the start of the lesson. But I think personally, if you're making the effort to enjoy, analyze, and talk about an advert and gain the vocabulary needed and the confidence to talk about it, why not extend it into a full lesson or a full week even, and use it for lots of different skills, and even come back and revise with this advert at a later date and use it in a different teaching context, but with the same students. Okay, so when using adverts, you don't have to have any particular experience, and you don't have to use any particular teaching methodology to use them. They are open for you, they're open for your interpretation, and they're open for you to decide what you want to do with them. And you can use many different approaches, and I talk about that a lot in the workshop, but really it's up to you.